Welcome to the programme. Well, on the fifth day of the war, events moving quickly. The US War Secretary Pete Hegseth says the US now has complete control over Iranian airspace. In a press conference a short time ago, he also announced that an American submarine had sunk an Iranian warship with a torpedo in international waters. Take a listen.
This was never meant to be a fair fight, and it is not a fair fight. We are punching them while they're down, which is exactly how it should be. Thus far, Operation Epic Fury has delivered twice the air power of shock and awe of Iraq in 2003, minus Paul Bremer and the nation building. The campaign has 7 times the intensity of Israel's previous operations against Iran during the 12-day war.
Well, as Iran's leaders gather to try to choose a successor to Khamenei, Israel says any leader chosen by the existing regime will be a clear target for elimination. This as the US and Israeli strikes continue, with Israeli attacks on Tehran and on Hezbollah inside Lebanon. Meanwhile, Iranian retaliation continues with an attack on the Saudi oil facility of Ras Tanura and other Gulf countries being targeted by Iranian missiles and drones. Turkey's defense ministry said NATO air defenses have intercepted a ballistic missile launched from Iran. Meanwhile, Donald Trump says the US military could begin escorting oil and gas tankers across the Gulf if necessary. This, of course, as Iran says it now has complete control of the Straits of Hormuz. And the Prime Minister of Spain, which is a NATO member, has branded the war a disaster in a defiant response to Donald Trump, who said the US would cease trade with Spain because of its lack of cooperation. Well, that is just some of where the situation is at now. We are now joined on the line from London by Renad Mansour. He is with Chatham House. He is Senior Research Fellow on the Middle East and North Africa programme there at the Chatham House think tank in London. First of all, thank you so much for giving us your time. Welcome to Around the World here on France 24. We thought it might be interesting to start today by taking a look at how Iran appears fairly isolated in all of this. Where is China? Where is Russia? Where are these proxy militia? We have heard from Hezbollah. But broadly, Iran, it seems no one is rushing to help Iran. I mean, maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about why Hezbollah delayed its involvement, why we have heard nothing from the Houthis. What is your view on that?
Well, Iran is currently in survival mode. The regime is looking to survive. And for the last year, even in the June war of 2025, Iran made it clear that the rules of the game are changing and that it wants to directly intervene and directly take part in these wars. No longer is Iran's defense doctrine or security doctrine predicated on these armed groups in the region, but it is directly by Iran. Of course, in conventional military terms, Iran is no match for either the US or Israel. And you can see that in the kind of asymmetry in which this campaign is unfolding. So what Iran is looking to do instead is to wreak havoc across the region, to not just make this a state-to-state military conflict, but to really to raise the stakes of this war, to raise it economically by targeting particularly the energy infrastructure, not just the Strait of Hormuz, but also gas and oil fields, and really to kind of push the point that, okay, China, Russia, others won't come to our defense, but we can show to all of our allies and adversaries the implications of these actions by US and Israel.
A number of military analysts suggested that the Iranians might do that, might target infrastructure, as you say, energy infrastructure and so on, should they be attacked. You know, how well prepared are these countries? And is it a sensible strategy? Are they not likely to be driving, for example, the Gulf states into the arms of Washington? You know, I've been hearing that a lot of diplomats in the Gulf have been saying to Washington, even though they counseled against this war, do it quickly, go in big, finish it off.
Yes, and for a long time, Iran was actually counting on these Gulf states to do that, to lobby again, to lobby to protect Iran from particularly, the Trump administration and the U.S. And over the years, the relationship between Iran and Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar has increased and enhanced, and it was going towards a positive, progression. I think ultimately a decision has been made by the regime in Iran, the government, that this is existential. And the same old rules or equilibrium of violence just wasn't working. And this is drastic. And, to only, in the past, Iran would have maybe sent a few symbolic missiles to save face, to show retaliation, and that would have ended another round of battering until the next time. And so I think a decision has been made in Tehran that it's no longer a time for a status quo power. And for survival, there needs to be something there's something quite existential. There needs to be something different. And this revisionism is really what we're seeing Iran do, and taking significant risks to its economy, to its relations with the Gulf, to potential retaliation. But this is a survival mode that Iran is operating under.
And, even as Iran tries to escalate this war, other major world powers that we might have expected to involve themselves are conspicuously absent, especially Russia, supposedly an ally of Iran. It did not come to al-Assad's rescue in Syria. It did very little when Maduro was captured in Venezuela. And it has not particularly reacted to the toppling of Khamenei, the killing of Khamenei. What do you make of Putin's position on all this?
I suppose there might have been a hope by some in the Iranian establishment last year that when Iran and Russia signed last January 2025 a security agreement, that perhaps there was a sort of move towards a security partnership. There are even joint exercises conducted between the two countries a month ago. But at the end, I think from Putin's perspective, of course, still bogged down in Russia's own war in Ukraine. These are all quite expensive, and for a Russia that's already so overstretched, intervening to fight two powerful militaries directly, the U.S. and Israel, is not in Russia's national security interests. So it's become clear that while countries like Russia, like China, certainly have political relationships with Iran, even economic relationships with Iran, it is not, they have made the calculation that it's not in their interest to really go to war with the US and Israel over Iran.
And that goes for China too, although China buys, I think, quite a bit of sanctioned Iranian oil, but they will just find it elsewhere, presumably.
Yes, I mean, or to take the hit in the meantime. China has in the last years become a huge market, and so much of that oil and gas product coming out of the Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, go towards China. So this will be a repercussion, and that's part of Iran's calculation. For a very long time, China has focused mainly on the economics. The BRICS, working with all entities to focus economically, but not get bogged down into politics or into wars as in these areas, especially the Middle East. And China is continuing this policy, but Iran is trying to push it to the limit, to say, this is not just about security. This is about the global economy. This is about any country that requires energy, any country that sells energy and is worried about the price of oil. So Iran is basically trying to push as much as possible, but knowing that Iran in the end will have to fight this on its own.
In the past, with wars in this region, it was very often a case of which countries were Sunni and which were Shia. Is that all completely irrelevant now?
I mean, certainly after 2003, and you know, we're living in that kind of moment. I mean, the 2003 U.S. invasion occupation of Iraq was one of these moments that transform a region. And at that time, the political system that the Americans pushed for in Iraq was a kind of ethno-sectarian system, and so the reaction became sectarian. And you had very strong Sunni insurgencies rise up, Shia militias rise up, fight each other over the years, and sectarianism became how politics, but also how security was practiced. In this case, I think you certainly have ancient and historical grievances between let's say, a Sunni Gulf countries and a Shia Iran, which, you know, in the last few years have been improved. But I think at the moment, it's far more geopolitical. From the perspective of the Gulf countries, yes, the ideologies are there. Yes, perhaps there is that, you know, at times some may see a Sunni-Shia divide, but we're talking about politics. We're talking about economics. We're talking about stability. And from the Gulf perspective, equally fearing an Israel that has become so powerful in the last few years, and also a U.S. that is indispensable, but at the same time not reliable all the time. The Gulf is in a very bad position, trying to preserve the stability it needs to be these economic powerhouses.
Really interesting to get your thoughts. Sadly, we are out of time. Renad Mansour, thank you so much. Senior Research Fellow on the Middle East and North Africa Programme at Chatham House think tank in London. Thank you so much for your time.